Welcome back to Daily English Dive. It is genuinely good to have you here with us today. I have to say, I walked into the studio feeling, well, a little bit different this morning. I feel optimized, or at least I am trying to be.
Optimized, that is a very specific word choice. Usually we talk about optimizing software or car engines. Did you get a new haircut, or have you finally mastered those irregular English verbs we were struggling with last week?
The verbs are still a work in progress, unfortunately.
Yeah.
No, I am talking about hardware. I bought a new smartwatch. And it is not just a watch. It is like a command center on my wrist. It glows, it vibrates, it tracks my standing time, my heart rate variability, even my blood oxygen. Honestly, it feels a bit like I am living in a sci-fi movie where I am the main character.
It really does feel that way sometimes, doesn't it? The pace at which consumer technology is moving right now is staggering. It is almost indistinguishable from magic, and that fits perfectly with what we are exploring with you today. We are continuing our series on modern technology and daily life.
It is a massive topic. But before we get into the gadgets and the glowing screens, I have a serious question for you. And it is one that I have been asking myself since I strapped this thing to my wrist. Is all of this technology actually making us happier, or is it just making us busier?
That is the core question, isn't it? And that is the absolute mission of this deep dive today. We aren't just looking at the features of the tech. We are looking at the features of the human responding to the tech. We are going to explore whether these upgrades are upgrading our lives or just upgrading our anxiety levels.
So let's look at the roadmap for today. We have a lot of ground to cover. We're going to start with the psychology of communication. Specifically, the shift from analog patience to digital panic. Then we will look at how tools like GPS and AI are actually physically changing the structure of our brains.
And finally, we will look at the biological truth about sleep in a high-paced world. We will explore why your body might be keeping a score that you can't even see. And since we are designing this deep dive for English learners, we are going to speak clearly, avoid overly complex jargon without explaining it first, and throw in a few vocabulary pro tips along the way.
I love that. I want to jump right in with communication. I was doing some cleaning in the attic this morning, just trying to be productive, and I found a box of old letters. They were written by my grandmother to her pen pal in France back in the 1960s. She wrote about how she would send a letter and then wait 2 full weeks just to know if her friend had received it.
2 weeks. We refer to that period as the analog era. It is genuinely hard for us to imagine now, but back then, the waiting was a huge part of the experience. It wasn't a bug in the system, it was a feature. In psychology, there is a very specific concept for this called delayed gratification.
Right, delayed gratification. I remember reading about this in college. It is essentially the ability to resist the temptation for an immediate reward and instead wait for a later reward. It is usually linked to impulse control, isn't it?
Precisely. It is a measure of executive function in the brain. You really can't talk about this without mentioning the famous marshmallow test from Stanford University.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is the classic study. They put a marshmallow in front of a child and basically said, if you don't eat this for 15 minutes, I will give you a second one.
That is the one. And while there has been some valid modern criticism of that study regarding socioeconomic factors and trust, the core principle remains incredibly interesting. The children who could wait, who could delay their happiness, generally showed higher measures of success later in life. They had better coping mechanisms for stress.
So if we apply that lens to my grandmother, the letters were the marshmallows.
In a way, yes. She wrote a letter, she waited 2 weeks, and the reward of receiving a reply felt incredibly special, specifically because of the investment of time. The scarcity of the communication made it valuable.
But today, we have definitely moved to the opposite end of the spectrum. We are living in the era of instant gratification.
We are. And that shift has profound chemical effects on the brain. Think about messaging apps like WhatsApp or Messenger.
Oh, I know this feeling well.
Yeah.
If I send a message to my best friend and she doesn't reply in 2 minutes, my brain goes into a complete panic spiral. I see those 2 blue ticks, so I know she has seen my message, but there is no reply.
The famous re-receipt anxiety. But let's look at what is happening under the hood, biologically speaking. When we get a ping or a like on our phone, our brain releases a tiny hit of dopamine.
That is the reward chemical,
Yeah.
right? The same thing you get from eating sugar.
Exactly. It is a feedback loop. We become conditioned to expect that fast hit of happiness. When the reply doesn't come instantly, our brain feels a withdrawal symptom. We don't just feel impatient, we actually feel ignored or rejected.
That is so true. It feels personal, even though it usually isn't.
This is why it is so useful to distinguish between 2 concepts, synchronous and asynchronous communication.
Right. Synchronous meaning happening at the exact same time, like a phone call or a face-to-face meeting. You speak, I answer.
Correct. And asynchronous means happening when you are ready. Email is supposed to be asynchronous. You send it, and the recipient replies on their own schedule. The problem is, we are treating asynchronous tools like text messaging as if they are synchronous. We demand instant replies from tools that should allow us to pause.
That makes total sense. Actually, before we move on, this feels like a good moment for one of those vocabulary pro tips for anyone learning English. I hear people say, please reply me quite a bit when they are waiting for a message.
That is a very common mistake. In English, you don't reply someone. You have to use the preposition to. So you should say, please reply to me, or I'm waiting for your reply. It is a small grammar fix, but it makes your English sound much more natural.
Please reply to me. Got it. I think the demand for instant replies is why I feel so burned out sometimes. I'm constantly on call. I need more asynchronous time in my life where I am not expected to react immediately.
We all do. It is about reclaiming your attention from the devices.
Speaking of attention and connection, let's pivot slightly. We know texting can be stressful, but surely technology helps us connect too. I mean, I video call my brother in London every Sunday. Seeing his face has to be better for my brain than just waiting 2 weeks for a letter.
Video calls are a great example of the benefits of modern tech. That visual connection triggers completely different neurons than just reading plain text. It is huge for mental health. In the past, long-distance relationships were defined by absence. Now, they can be defined by presence.
However, I have heard a term recently that describes the darker side of this digital connection: social snacking.
Yes, this is a fascinating concept. It challenges the misconception that all digital interaction is truly social. Social snacking is when we use small digital interactions like clicking a like button, sending an emoji, or watching a friend's video story to replace deep, meaningful conversation.
I really like the nutrition analogy there. It implies you are eating, but you aren't getting any actual vitamins.
Exactly. It is like eating candy instead of a nutritious meal. It feels good for a second because you get that dopamine sugar rush, but you are still hungry for real connection. You can scroll through social media for an hour, interact with 50 different people, and actually feel lonelier than when you started.
I'm definitely guilty of that. And speaking of snacking, I have to admit something. I spend a significant amount of time taking photos of my lunch before I actually eat it.
Really? Why do you think you do that?
I guess, well, I want people to see it. To know I am eating something good, it feels like if I don't share it, it didn't really happen.
That is called external validation. You are seeking likes from other people to release that dopamine we talked about. But it raises a big philosophical question for all of us. Are we living our lives, or are we just recording them for an audience?
That hits hard. I need to think about that next time I'm arranging my sandwich to get the perfect lighting. Okay, let's move from how we connect with people to how we navigate the physical world. I have another confession to make.
Go ahead. This is a safe space.
I am completely 100% directionally challenged. If I turned left out of my house without my phone, I am already lost. I rely on my GPS for absolutely everything. If my battery dies, I might literally never be seen again.
You are certainly not alone in that. But this brings up a very serious topic in neuroscience called cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading. That sounds like I am dumping heavy cargo off a ship to make it lighter.
In a way, you are. You are letting a device handle a cognitive task like spatial navigation to free up brain space. You offload the navigation so you can think about other things like your work or your lunch, but there is a catch.
There is always a catch with the brain. Use it or lose it.
Exactly. Have you ever heard of the famous London taxi driver study?
I have read some headlines about it, but remind me of the details. It is about something called the knowledge, right?
Yes. To get a black cab license in London, drivers have to memorize 25,000 streets and thousands of landmarks. It takes years of intense study. Researchers scanned the brains of these drivers and found something incredible. The hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for memory and spatial navigation, was physically larger in the taxi drivers than in the control group.
That is wild. So their brains physically change structure. That is neuroplasticity, right?
Correct. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience. But here is the flip side of that study. Later research suggested that people who rely solely on GPS for a long period of time actually show less activity in the hippocampus.
So by offloading the task to my phone, I'm essentially letting that part of my brain atrophy. I'm letting it get flabby.
Potentially, yes. When you use GPS, you are just following basic instructions. Turn left, turn right. You aren't building a mental map. We call this the difference between egocentric navigation, which is viewing the world only from your own immediate viewpoint, and allocentric navigation, which is understanding the broader map of the world in your head.
So what is the solution here? Do I have to throw away my smartphone and buy a giant paper map?
No, we don't need to be Luddites and reject all technology. But you can use the tech intentionally. This is a great, healthy habit to start. Maybe use the GPS to get to a new place, but then try to remember the landmarks on the way home without looking at the screen. Force your brain to do the heavy lifting occasionally. Think of it as a workout for your hippocampus.
I like that. A brain gym session on the commute home. Now, speaking of efficiency and offloading tasks, let's talk about shopping. I love the convenience of online shopping, but sometimes it makes me want to scream.
Why is that?
Too many options. Way too many options. The other day, I wanted to buy a toaster, just a simple machine to make bread hot. I spent 2 hours on a shopping app. There were 5,000 different options. By the end of it, I was so exhausted, I didn't even buy one. I just ate cold bread.
You experience what is called the paradox of choice. This is a very popular theory developed by psychologist Barry Schwartz.
It feels counterintuitive, though. Shouldn't having more choices equal having more freedom?
We tend to think so. We assume choice is inherently good, so more choice must be better. But actually, past a certain point, more choice just equals more anxiety.
That is exactly how I felt. I was terrified of picking the wrong toaster and regretting it later.
We call that decision fatigue. Your brain has a limited supply of executive function. Think of it like a battery bar on your phone, but for making decisions. Every time you compare features, check the price, and read the reviews, you drain a little bit of that battery. When you have to choose between 5,000 toasters, you drain that battery very, very fast.
And then I have absolutely no energy left for the important decisions I have to make in my day.
Exactly. This is why you see people like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg wearing the exact same clothes every single day. They are eliminating mundane choices to save their decision battery for high-stakes, important issues.
Okay, but for us normal people who aren't running major tech companies, how do we handle the toaster situation?
Try using the rule of 3. Use the filter tools on the website immediately. Filter by your price range, filter by a 4-star rating until you have only 3 options left on the screen. Then pick one of those 3 and move on.
Just pick one and move on. Don't look back.
Precisely. In psychology, this is called satisficing instead of maximizing. Satisficing is searching until you find something that is good enough to meet your needs. Maximizing is trying to find the absolute perfect, best option available. Maximizers are usually much more unhappy because they're always wondering if they missed out on something better.
I am definitely going to try to be a satisficer from now on. Good enough is good enough. Now, speaking of technology in the home, let's talk about the one piece of tech I actually have an emotional relationship with.
Oh, really? Do tell.
I'm talking about Dusty.
Dusty.
Yes, Dusty is my robot vacuum cleaner. He is small, he is round, and he works very hard.
Notice how you just called the vacuum he. You gave a machine a name and a gender.
Well, yeah. I mean, when he gets stuck into the sofa, he makes this sad little beeping sound. It sounds like he is crying for help. I actually feel genuinely bad for him.
This is a classic example of anthropomorphism.
Anthropomorphism. That is a heavy vocabulary word for us today.
It breaks down quite simply. Anthro means human, and morph means form. It means attributing human characteristics, human emotions, or human intentions to non-human entities.
Why do we do that? Is it just because we are secretly lonely?
It is actually evolutionary. Our brains are hardwired to look for faces and agency in the world around us. But interestingly, modern psychology tells us that naming our robots actually increases our trust in them. It makes them feel like partners rather than just cold, unfeeling tools.
He's a partner. He cleans the floor so I don't have to do it.
And that highlights the real value of smart home tech. It automates mundane tasks. By the way, mundane is a great word for our learners. It means boring, repetitive, or ordinary. When the robot handles the mundane maintenance of your floor, you have more energy and time for high-value tasks like learning English.
Which brings us perfectly to the ultimate form of maintenance. We have talked about maintaining the house, but we really need to talk about maintaining the biological machine that runs it all. The human brain.
Ah, yes. We need to talk about sleep.
This is where I struggle the most. I have this theory, or maybe it's just a bad habit, that I call the weekend sleep marathon. During the week, I am super busy. I sleep maybe 5 hours a night. I tell myself it is okay because I will just pay it back on the weekend. Then Saturday comes and I crash and sleep for 12 hours straight.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but the sleep bank theory is a total myth. You cannot bank sleep like you bank money.
But the math works perfectly. If I miss 10 hours of sleep during the work week and I add 10 extra hours on the weekend, the total amount of sleep is the same.
The math works on paper, but the biology absolutely does not. To understand why, we need to get into the chemistry of sleep pressure. Specifically, we need to look at a chemical called adenosine.
Adenosine, okay. I feel like I have heard of this in relation to drinking coffee.
You probably have. Think of adenosine as a chemical that builds up in your brain every single minute you are awake. It is a natural byproduct of your brain burning energy. The longer you are awake, the more adenosine accumulates. It creates what we call sleep pressure. That is that heavy, tired feeling behind your eyes late at night.
And drinking coffee blocks that pressure.
Coffee just masks it. The caffeine molecules plug the receptors in your brain so you don't feel the adenosine, but the chemical is still physically building up in the background. The only way to actually clear it out of your system is to sleep.
So it is kind of like taking out the trash at the end of the day.
That is a perfect analogy, but here's the major problem with your 5-hour nights during the week. If you only sleep 5 hours, you do not clear all the adenosine. You have leftovers.
And then the next day I wake up and add even more to the pile.
Right. You are building a massive deficit. By Friday, you have a huge toxic buildup of this chemical in your brain. That is why you feel like a zombie by the end of the week. And here is the kicker. One long sleep on Saturday is not biologically capable of clearing a whole week's worth of cellular waste in one single go.
Wait, you mentioned waste. Is there actual physical trash in my brain?
In a way, yes. This is one of the most fascinating discoveries in recent neuroscience. It is called the glymphatic system.
Glymphatic. It sounds a lot like the lymphatic system in the rest of the body.
It is very similar, but it is specifically for the brain. Think of it as the brain's dishwasher. During deep sleep, your brain cells actually shrink slightly to allow cerebrospinal fluid to wash through the tissue. It physically cleans out metabolic waste, including harmful proteins like beta amyloid, which is strongly linked to Alzheimer's disease.
So when I cut my sleep short to just 5 hours,
you are essentially stopping the dishwasher before the cycle is finished. The soap is still on the dishes, the food is still there, the mental waste stays inside your head, and this leads directly to cognitive impairment.
how bad are we talking here? Just feeling a bit groggy the next morning?
Much worse than that. Research shows that being awake for 17 to 19 hours, which is a pretty standard long day for many busy people, results in cognitive performance equivalent to having a blood alcohol level of 0.05%. You are basically operating as if you are legally drunk.
That is terrifying. So if I pull an all-nighter for work, I am basically operating heavy machinery like driving my car or doing my job while completely impaired.
Yes, you are. Your reaction time slows down significantly, your emotional regulation drops, and your ability to focus dissolves.
Okay, you have completely convinced me. But what about that weekend catch-up sleep? Even if it doesn't clear the chemical completely, doesn't it at least help a little bit?
It might feel good in the moment, but it actually creates an entirely new problem called social jet lag.
Social jet lag. I am not flying anywhere on the weekends, though.
You don't have to get on an airplane to get jet lag. Your body has a circadian rhythm, which is your internal biological clock. If you wake up at 7 a.m. all week for work, and then you sleep until 1 p.m. on Saturday, you have aggressively shifted your body's time zone by 6 hours. It is the biological equivalent of flying from New York to London and back every single weekend.
So that is why Monday morning is always so painful. It is not just that I hate Mondays. My body literally thinks it is the middle of the night.
Exactly. You gave yourself severe jet lag without ever leaving your bedroom. The healthier habit by far is consistency. You need to wake up at the same time every day, even on the weekends.
Wow. Okay. I need to rethink my entire life strategy. Saving up sleep is a total myth. Relying on GPS is actively shrinking my hippocampus, and social snacking is leaving me starved for real connection.
Well, it certainly sounds bleak when you summarize it all together like that, but the takeaway here is actually very positive. We have the power to change all of these behaviors.
You are right. It is about personal agency. Let's do a quick recap of the key concepts we covered today, because there was some fairly heavy terminology in there for our listeners.
Let's review the power words. We talked about cognitive offloading. That is, using tools to save brain space, but doing so at the risk of losing our natural abilities.
We discussed decision fatigue and the paradox of choice. We learned how having too many options, like 5,000 toasters, actually drains our biological battery.
We covered anthropomorphism. That is our tendency to bond with robots and give human traits to machines like your vacuum, Dusty.
And finally, we looked at social jet lag, And the glymphatic system. That is the brain's vital nightly cleaning crew that we simply cannot afford to skip.
Precisely. You summarized that beautifully.
So what is the actionable advice here for you, the listener?
For me, I think the biggest takeaway is that I need to stop treating my brain like a machine that can just run on empty. I am going to try to navigate home today without the GPS. Wish me luck on that. And I am definitely retiring from the weekend sleep marathon. That sounds like a very solid plan. It is all about using technology to support our biology, not to replace it or ignore it.
Absolutely. Now, I have a quick question for you, the listener. We talked about Dusty today. Do you have a smart device in your home? And more importantly, have you given it a name? Does your car or your robot vacuum have a personality?
I would love to hear those names. It says a lot about our psychology and how we connect with the world. Please share them with us in the comments.
We have one more deep dive coming up in this series on modern life. We are going to tackle mental health, mindfulness, and a fascinating concept called the monkey mind.
If you think your robot vacuum is noisy, just wait until you meet the constant chatter inside your own head.
I cannot wait for that one. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Stay curious, stay healthy, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone. Take care.